Although I admit that the outcome in a stateless society will be bad, because not only are people not angels, but many of them are irredeemably vicious in the extreme, I conjecture that the outcome in a society under a state will be worse, indeed much worse. Because, first, the most vicious people in society will tend to gain control of the state. And second, by virtue of this control over the state's powerful engines of death and destruction, they will wreak vastly more harm than they ever could have caused outside the state. It is unfortunate that some individuals commit crimes, but it is stunningly worse when such criminally inclined individuals wield state powers. Lest anyone protest that the state's true function, or duty, or end is, as Locke, Madison, and countless others have argued, to protect individual rights to life, liberty, and property, the evidence of history clearly shows that, as a rule, real states do not behave according to that ideal. The notion that states actually function along such lines, or that they strive to carry out such a duty or to achieve such an end, resides in the realm of wishful thinking. Although some states, in their own self-interest, may at some times protect some residents of their territories, other than the state's own functionaries, such protection is at best highly unreliable and all too often nothing but a solemn farce. Moreover, it is invariably mixed with crimes against the very people the state purports to protect, because the state cannot even exist without committing the crimes of extortion and robbery, which states call taxation. And, as a rule, of course, this crime is but the merest beginning of the state's assaults on the lives, liberties, and property of the resident population. In the United States, for example, the state at one time or another during recent decades, we're not talking ancient history, has confined millions of persons in dreadful steel cages because they had the temerity to engage in the wholly voluntary buying and selling, or the mere possession of officially disapproved products. Compounding such state crimes, that is, crimes of kidnapping and unjust confinement, with impudence, state officials brazenly claim credit for their assaults on the victims of their so-called war on drugs. State functionaries have yet to explain how their rampant, unprovoked crimes comport with the archetype described and justified in Locke's second treatise of government. Everyone can see the immense harm the state causes day in and day out, not to mention its periodic orgies of mass death and destruction. In the past century alone, states caused hundreds of millions of deaths, not to the combatants on both sides of the many wars they launched, whose casualties loom very large, but to, quote unquote, their own populations, whom they have chosen to shoot, bomb, shell, hack, stab, beat, gas, starve, work to death, and otherwise obliterate in ways too grotesque to contemplate calmly. J.R. Rummel, who spent a lifetime compiling data on this so-called democide, non-war state killing, now has a total of 262 democide victims in the 20th century, 262 million. And if you go to his website for J.R. Rummel, democide, you can find a great deal of data on this matter, all sufficiently horrifying data, I might add. And I believe even Rummel's numbers are understatements of the amount of true democide, because many state actions, such as the Food and Drug Administration's actions that have caused hundreds of thousands of premature deaths are not included in Rummel's compilations, only people that were violently killed outright. But the state has enough imagination to find many indirect ways of killing people as well. Yet, almost incomprehensibly, people fear that without the state's supposedly indispensable protection, society will lapse into disorder and people will suffer grave harm. Even an analyst as astute as Mansur Olson, who speaks frankly of, quote, governments and all the good and bad things they do, end quote, proceeds immediately to contrast, quote, the horrible anarchies that emerge in their absence. Although he gives no examples or even citations to support his characterization of anarchy. But the state's harms, in Olson's words, the bad things they do, are here and now, undeniable, immense, and horrifying, whereas the harms alleged to be suffered without the state are specters of the mind and almost entirely conjectural. Anarchists did not try to carry out genocide against the Armenians in Turkey. They did not deliberately starve to death millions of Ukrainians. They did not create a system of death camps to kill millions of Jews, Gypsies, and Slavs in Europe. They did not firebomb scores of large German and Japanese cities and drop nuclear bombs on 2 of them. They did not carry out a great leap forward that killed scores of millions of Chinese people. They did not kill more than 500,000 members of the Indonesian Communist Party, alleged party sympathizers, and others. They did not attempt to kill everybody with any appreciable education in Cambodia, murdering 1/4 of the country's population. They did not kill as many as 200,000 Mayan peasants and others in Guatemala. They did not kill more than 500,000 Tutsis and pro-peace Hutus in Rwanda. They did not implement U.S. and Allied trade sanctions that killed perhaps 500,000 Iraqi children. They did not launch one aggressive U.S. war after another. There's a great deal anarchists did not do, but statists did do. States are clumsy and inept in many ways, thank God. But they are exceptionally good at wreaking death and destruction. Indeed, if they were not, they could not sustain themselves as states. In a functional sense, we may define the state as the organization with comparative advantage in deliberately, violently killing people and in appropriating and destroying wealth.